وسهلا بكل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا مع ليلى الحسيني في بث حي ومباشر عبر wnzk راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on wnzk 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan with Layla Al-Husseini. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues with your host, Layla Al-Husseini.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNZK 690 AM and wdmv 700 AM.
Good morning, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. Welcome to another great program on Radio Baladi on U.S. Arab Radio. Today is not a usual day. Today is the inauguration of a president whose victory came as an unprecedented surprise, even we can say a shock for many people, and there has been a degree of unprecedented division and polarization in American society lately around the presidential election, the result of the election, and indeed the inauguration which is taking place today. So our discussion today will be about Trump's new era, the political and communication changes and challenges, and with me this morning discussing this important topic are two media experts. Barrett Pitner, who is a Washington-based journalist. He's a columnist, writer, journalist who writes on issues of race, politics, and culture in prominent media outlets such as the Daily Beast and The Guardian and others. And Tatum, an award-winning journalist and the former national president of the Society of Journalists, and she's also a Denver-based journalist, and she has created her own communications consulting company, which is called Media Salad Incorporation. Welcome to the show, Barrett and Kristen.
Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Yes, thank you so much for being with me on the show today. I know it's a busy day for everybody, so I really appreciate very much the fact that you're taking time out of your busy schedules to be with me today on U.S. Arab Radio and to inform our listeners about your views and thoughts about the inauguration and the upcoming new Trump era and its possible implications. The first question really, which I cannot help but ask and feel free to share as much or as little as you want with our listeners, but really, how do you personally feel about today? I mean, today is not, as I said, the introduction is not a regular or a usual day. It's not just another day. It's a very significant, important, and remarkable day in American history. I mean, we cannot just be neutral about this day, whichever way we feel about it. So I'll start with you, Barrett, if you can share some of your own thoughts, feelings, reactions about today.
Yeah, today is a very a day most people didn't expect that they would see. Like, most people didn't think Trump would win, and I think there's some very legitimate concerns about what his governing will look like and how it will impact Muslim Americans, African Americans, Latinos, all different walks of life, white Americans too. And since he clearly stoked a lot of racial division, he's never held elected office, and he's assembled a cabinet that is the most unqualified cabinet, I think, in modern, in American history. There's a lot of concern as to what the direction of America will be during his presidency, and so it's there are few reasons to be optimistic, and that's trying to be objective, just based on what his campaign has looked like and who he's chosen to try to lead the country. They seem unqualified, and that's just very, very dangerous.
And if I move to you, Kristen, what are your own thoughts and feelings and reactions about today?
So I look at it from different perspectives and for different reasons. And I take a step back, and first I recognize that what we're watching today is the transference of power. And despite what will be many, many, many protesters, very strong shows of dissent, we also will see today the peaceful transfer of power, which is American exceptionalism. We have maintained a peaceful transference of power for more than 240 years. And I think that in and of itself is something that all of us, regardless of how we feel about the election's outcome, should take a step back and recognize that this is one of the things that makes our country special and unique in the world. And so for that reason, I take a larger view of what's happening today, and I recognize that larger context first and foremost. And I would agree that many people did not see this election happening and this outcome happening. I would also contest many people did. And that's what I'm sure we're also going to talk a little bit more about, which is the degree to which moving forward, perhaps we can all be more attuned to what others around us, even if they have differing views, are thinking.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a very important point, really, which is the unprecedented degree of polarization and division, which has been seen during and immediately after the declaration of the results of the election. I mean, many people, many analysts and critics would say that we have not witnessed this high degree of division and polarization. Indeed, I agree with you, Kristen, that the peaceful transition of power is very important, and of course we hope it stays peaceful. That's very important. At the same time, we have seen people protesting and going out in the streets and expressing their views, and some of these views are very strong. And, really, are you expecting this degree of polarization and division to continue, or is there a way for people to bring their positions closer together, maybe cement some of the, differences, close some of the gaps? Barrett, what do you think?
No, I think these divisions will stay, and I don't foresee them going away. It's like, to be honest, I'm real kind of surprised that people talk about these divisions as if America hasn't been divided for its entirety. It's like the people that are representing most of the divisions are minorities and women. And clearly in American history, we have divided the country along those lines for a very long time. This is just this is just the time frame when minorities and women actually have a greater level of agency and capacity to really change the political climate. And Barack Obama won in 2008 and 12 due to this engaged minority electorate. And so I don't see it going away. And frankly, when you win an election by roughly 3 million votes and you have almost no influence in Congress or the electorate, I don't think people should be quiet. You have to make your voice heard, especially if your voice is the majority voice.
And Kristen, what are your thoughts on this kind of unprecedented division and fragmentation in American society? And do you think it's going to be closed, or people are going to get together closer, and really kind of bridge some of the gaps and differences anytime soon?
Well, I absolutely would concur that the country has been divided, and this is an unprecedented division. I suppose you could say we haven't seen in contemporary times, like in my lifetime, I have not seen so much division at the point of a presidential inauguration. But I absolutely do concur that there have always been differences. There will always be differences, and those differences on some levels are not going to go away with this particular presidency. Where I differ is that I think that the proof is in the pudding. We're looking today at the inauguration. It's very easy to speculate about all sorts of things that may or may not actually happen. And what I often find is that speculation, I mean, we can be preventive and we can be proactive, but I think also, too, we can overreach in our terms. And I think sometimes we can be off base. We can make predictions about things that don't come to fruition. And in making those predictions, we also do harm to dialogue, and we don't see people bringing things together. I do think that there is room today for optimism. I do think there is room today for hope. I think there is room today to believe that people will be able to find greater common ground on some issues, not all, and that people will be able in some form or fashion, if they truly are committed to working and living up to what they articulate to be the desire to bridge differences, there is always room in our lives to do that. So I don't get into the naysaying. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, even the reaction as to whether to attend the inauguration itself today or not has been, an issue of division. I mean, I know people who decided to say, okay, I'm not going to go and I'm going to boycott the inauguration. I'm not going to attend. And then, I have a friend of mine, Dr. Mike Rouse, who has been also a guest on this radio show, and he posted on Facebook that although I don't agree with everything that Trump stands for, my decision is to attend the inauguration because I promote the idea of cohesion versus division. And of course, as you can imagine, the reactions to his own post were very divisive. There were people who said, yeah, that's the way to go. We need to promote the notion of cohesion versus division. And of course, he did get some heat from people who said, why are you going? This is not going to change anything. You are too hopeful. Boycotting is the right thing to do. Your thoughts around that, Brett?
Yeah, so first of all, when we're talking about these protests and people, the protests are not attending inauguration, I don't know why we seem so inclined to view it as division, essentially. Like if 20,000 people or 25,000 people in New York get together to say that they disagree with the incoming president's policies, that's a lot of people that are together that might not have been together 6 months ago or 5 months ago. Like this Women's March is going to bring women from all across the country who might not have been together before. So we're already going down a dangerous path if we're viewing people who represent the majority of the American electorate getting together and voicing their perspective. Their perspective happens to be different than the president, whose perspective is the minority perspective. If we already view them as protesters and in the negative, we're starting on like a really dangerous, counterproductive tone right off the bat that I think we don't need to delve into. Additionally, when it comes to people whether they want to attend the inauguration or not, I don't know why that's even that big of a deal. Like no one has a mandate that they have to attend an inauguration. They're not going around trying to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president. They're not breaking the law. They're not doing anything like that's not civil. Like we have the capacity to voice our agreement and our disagreements in as many ways as we want, and the goal is to be civil and polite. And everyone that is objecting to Donald Trump right now, they're finding the most constructive, polite ways to do it, and I don't see why there is a need to try to demonize that. I think a lot of the people that are presenting arguments for why they should engage and collaborate with Donald Trump just seem to give really bad arguments about why that's a necessity, that open the floodgates for criticism. Like the people that are articulating why they want to abstain or whatever, they know that's a very difficult, it's a complex reason, and their arguments seem to be a bit more on solid ground. So I think we are strangely criticizing the wrong people just for voicing their perspectives.
And Kristen, in 1 minute, because we have to go to a commercial break, if you have
one thing that I would jump in and I would just simply say is that absolutely, we shouldn't view everybody as being troublemaking, but just this week it has been revealed that there were a significant number of people who were planning to show up in D.C. In our First Amendment, we see that we are protected for the purposes of peaceable assembly, correct? So what we want to see is peaceable assembly. There are plenty of people who are plotting to create all sorts of problems. And just last night, there were people barricading things and prohibiting people who had tickets to go to events from being able to enter those events. So I don't think we should give that behavior a pass either. And I think it's also important to recognize that back in October, a lot of people were lectured about the importance of accepting the results of the election. That doesn't mean that you don't have room for disagreement, but to watch a lot of people lecture everyone practically in the country back in the fall about how important it was to accept the outcome, and to see so many people having so much trouble accepting the election outcome, I let's just say I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Barrett, you have something to say about that?
Thank you. But yes, thank you for that. And, and I'm glad that you plumbed into that. And we will need to talk about the differences between the popular vote and the electoral vote in our country.
So
let's come back to this point, and I'll start with you, Barrett, right after this commercial break. So we'll go for a quick commercial break and come right back, okay? Thank you. Stay tuned.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Imad Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Imad Nakash. See Dr. Imad Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
A car accident can change your life in an instant. As a result of a car accident, you may become unemployed. As a result of a car accident, you may need a lot of medical treatment. People think that insurance companies are on their side. Why? Because they're giving them 1 or 2 benefits. Are they giving them all the benefits they deserve? How would one know unless you consult with an attorney? Call the law offices of Jumana Kiruz at 248-557-3645. 248-557-3645.
It's never too early to get your child on the right track. From their first words to first grade, Dreamy Children's Center in Troy works closely with parents to provide an experience that goes beyond early education. The highly qualified and experienced staff use a variety of programs that can help nurture important personality traits like responsibility, independence, problem solving, motivation, and respect. They also have educational programs ranging from preschooling for infants, toddlers, transitional toddlers, and pre-K to Montessori-approved programs and bilingual curriculums for young children. They're open from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., can provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks in between, and can also arrange for after-school pickup. Dreamy Children's Center in Troy is located at 37373 DeQuinder, just above 16 Mile Road, and can be found on Facebook at Dreamy Children's Center. Ask about the free preschool program. Call today, 248-680-9170, 248-680-9170.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the 3rd Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arabs, WNZK 690 AM and wdmv 700 AM.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we are discussing today a very important topic, which is, of course, the inauguration of Donald Trump and the new Trump era and its possible political and communication changes and challenges. And with me this morning discussing this important topic are two media experts, Mr. Barrett Pitner and Ms. Tatum. Barrett, you had something to say about what Kristen was talking about right before we went to the commercial break. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, one of the points that I wanted to make sure that we dive into, because we've made so many references to the popular vote, I feel that we also need to acknowledge the difference between the electoral vote and the popular vote, and that these are significant and significantly important differences.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Barrett, your comments?
Yeah, so just to get into all of that, like, frankly, when we're talking about people peacefully assembling and having protests, like, the message is always to assemble in a peaceful manner. That's all we've been talking about right now, is people that are deciding to abstain from the inauguration or hold protests with the goal of being peaceful. And New York had 25,000 people that did it yesterday. So then jumping to this cloud of looming violence that we all of a sudden now need to say we don't agree with, when we've always been saying that no one's condoning anyone doing any sort of violence in the slightest, only undermines people assembling in a peaceful manner, where you present it as if it's violent just inherently, and that's just dangerous. And when we're talking about the popular vote versus the electoral college, we're not saying that the electoral college has it's invalidated or anything. We know the rules. The Democrats know the rules, and he won via the electoral college. That doesn't mean that your message, which is the Democrats' message, now is no longer representative of the majority of Americans, because more people supported it. They're two completely different things. And I think if, due to the electoral college, due to the structure of the Senate and the gerrymandering structure of the House, the Democrats have no official political power due to structure, but they do have represent the perspective of the majority of voting Americans, then they need to make sure that they gather or express their voices in a way so that they can represent the people who support them. Additionally, when we start talking about Trump in October and how people wanted to know if Trump would respect the outcome of the elections, the reason for that conversation was that Trump kept on saying that everything was rigged and that there was voter fraud, that he was going to be cheated, and that he didn't believe that the integrity of our election structure was there. That was an unprecedented level of line of communication from a presidential candidate, where people needed to get Trump to say, will you respect it, because you are saying that it doesn't work. You are saying that it's not valid and that you're going to be cheated. Will you respect it? You had to ask him that, because he put into question the very foundations of our democracy. You didn't have to ask the Democrats that question, because they never said that they didn't think the structures were fine. And now that he won via electoral college, which is our structure, the Democrats respect it. There's a peaceful transition of power, but they should be allowed to say that it's very frustrating, that they don't like his policies, that they're still going to fight for the perspectives of the many, many Americans that they're representing, which are the majority of voting Americans. They're two completely different things. We're conflating the worst iteration of two things to undermine people just peacefully voicing their discontent. That's very dangerous to do.
Well, I'm not conflating anything, for starters. I don't want to be accused of that, and I don't want to have to deal with the implication that I'm doing that. But with that said, I do think, once again, that, yes, absolutely, people should be able to articulate what they're believing and their dissent and their disagreement, all of those things peaceably. And we have reasons to see that that's not always happening. And we have lots of reasons to, and also going back into the fall, we could see that, yes, there were frequent complaints about the quote-unquote rigged system. But those complaints really were coming from both sides, just expressed differently. And I think that there were lots of questions at the point that Donald Trump was asked during that debate whether he would accept the election results. There were a lot of questions up in the air, a lot of factors, things going on about whether, yes, there were undue influences here, there, and everywhere, including and especially coming from news coverage. So when he expressed, yes, the system's feeling rigged, this is rigged, and are we talking about literally, are we talking about figuratively? I mean, you know, these things are also easily debated, but one thing we know for certain was that we were told that we needed to accept the election results. And while a lot of people are doing that, a lot of people also are not. And I think we have to be honest and truthful about that, too. Because there are ongoing efforts to do something about a Donald Trump presidency. Don't think it all goes away today just because the inauguration is happening. There are political machinations underway, even as we speak, to undermine and delegitimize a Trump administration and presidency.
Of course, the irony here, you know, you talked. Go ahead. What were you saying, Kristen?
I was just saying, also in very serious ways. I mean, these are also things that we should be, as journalists, we should be, you know, aggressively inquiring about and wanting to know more about too.
We will definitely get to the journalism part, but just very quickly, Barrett, you did not like the word division. You said the word division is not the right word to use in this context. What would be a better word? You're a journalist and writer and columnist, of course. What would be a better way or a better word to describe the current scene, the political scene or the environment right now, better than the word division?
No, what I'm most surprised about is that people act as though this division along like the lines that we're seeing right now are somehow like a new thing. Like we were acting as though it's surprising. Like Donald Trump's campaign was that he wanted to make America great again. He wanted it to be more representative of a previous time in America, that these divisions were really, really severe. And so now we have our society, and these divisions are showing their face again. I think my biggest complaint about how people will discuss it isn't the word division, but just how we have some sort of surprise as if this is a new thing, that that minorities feel as though their perspective and their way of life is not being represented by a primarily elitist majority white political establishment. Like that's not a new thing in American society. I think detailing it as if it's new is disingenuous. You have to take a look at it. Make America Great Again doesn't only apply, it isn't referring only to our country's social landscape. Also, too, people are talking about the economy. People are talking about business. Donald Trump has talked repeatedly about employment in the United States. So he could just as easily be hearkening back to more robust times of economic boom, and the very states that gave him the electoral vote that he received, the landslide electoral vote that he received, were in those distressed states, and they were primarily, even in the exit polling, indicating that they were voting for reasons of the economy. They've been very harmed by trade deals and things like that. Yeah, I'm not saying that when he said he wanted to make America great again, that he's speaking specifically to social issues. I totally understand. He was to both. Yeah, hold on one second, okay? I'm not saying that he was speaking about social issues. Clearly, he was speaking about economic issues. He pitched that to the rest of it. What I'm saying is that when he's saying he wants to make America great again in a previous era, whatever that era may be, whatever he's talking about, whether it's social, economic, we shouldn't be surprised and say it's unprecedented when the social divisions that are showing their face in America are similar to pre-existing social divisions. You need to have a greater amount of foresight and understanding of what again could be, and not say that the people that are interpreting, and when he didn't give any specifics, he's quite vague in his statements and just, lets people fill in the blanks, that the minorities that represent a lot of America are not, they hear that, and they aren't immediately thinking about economic situations. I think it's fair to say that his vagueness and the message could lead to social divisions that are similar to the past, and now that we have them right now, we shouldn't be surprised. I think that's very fair.
Okay, Kristen, a quick comment on that if you want, and then we'll move on to talk about the media's role. Go ahead.
No, I concur on many levels concerning the social division, and once again, I'll just reiterate, it's not unprecedented. I think that's the problematic word to use here. I just don't think that the division is unprecedented in our country, or that, again, division has gone away significantly, even because of, the presidency, the 8 years of an Obama administration. We're still looking at division in our country. I always think that we will in many ways and for unfortunate reasons. At the same time, my point is just simply that when you're referring to Make America Great Again, the focus also needs to include reference to the American economy.
Right. Okay, I'll move on to talk about the Women's March quickly before we talk about the communication landscape and the media's role, which of course both of you are experts on. Kristen, we will come to this issue of the Women's March and the importance and significance of this march. I'll also get your thoughts on that, Barrett, right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
Life for Relief and Development is a nonprofit charity that has been providing humanitarian aid and development to people and communities regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background for over 22 years. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life rushes to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Life also has development projects that provide medical relief, water purification, educational programs, relief for orphans, and much more. Your help and support can greatly improve these efforts. All donations are tax deductible. For more information, please visit our website at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's lifeusa.org, 248-424-7493.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood, 734-744-9796.
مع أقوى الأفلام مدبلجة.
يمكنكم مشاهدة قناتي في ألوان في أفلام على ديش نتورك أو على سلينك بلاتفورم.
الدنيا مسرح كبير على زي أفلام، لذا عليك أن تصنع قصتك بنفسك.
From India.
زي ألوان ستبهركم بكل حصري وجديد.
زي أفلام دخلت بيوت جميع عشاق بوليوود، وزي ألوان لونت عالم بوليوود. لا تفوتوا مشاهدة أجمل الأفلام على زي أفلام وزي ألوان.
يمكنكم مشاهدة قناتي زي ألوان زي أفلام على ديش نتورك أو على سلينك بلاتفورم.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arabs, WNZK 690 AM and wdmv 700 AM.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we're discussing today Trump's new era, the political and communication changes and challenges. And with me this morning discussing this important topic are two guests who are media experts, Mr. Barrett Pitner and Ms. Kristen Tatum. Kristen, before going to the commercial break, we were talking about the Women's March, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that. It's expected to draw thousands of women, nationwide. Some of them are marching on Washington, D.C., and some of them are marching elsewhere in many parts of the U.S. as well. What are your own thoughts around that?
Well,
Kristen, are you with me? Yes. Go ahead.
Yes. So I think it's delightful, and I think it's wonderful, and I think it's inspirational, and I think it's all of these fantastic things to see so many women turn out to express their views about the things that they feel very, very passionately about. And once again, it harkens back to our previous conversation about the need for peaceable assembly. I am delighted also, too, to see the consolidation of these voices. As we previously noted, it's a really nice time in history to see people with the resources be able to rise up in such great number to have the voice that people are, wanting to have today. At the same time here in Denver, and again, I can tell you that it's just, the human nature of it all and the tension of it all and the conflict of it all really has also been apparent, because there are organizers of the Women's March here who returned some support to women's groups who did not share views on abortion, for example, and it was specifically abortion. And so I've been tracking the efforts to march locally in Denver on social media, and I can see several women who represent anti-abortion, they call themselves pro-life, but anti-abortion groups are still going to go to the march. A couple of the women, when they heard that their support had been rejected, had been returned to their groups by the organizers of the Women's March in Denver, some of them are not going now. They don't feel included. They don't feel respected. Others of them are still going to show up. So again, we see in our country today the resilience, we see the determination, we see the effort, and I think all of that is admirable, and that's what I want to stay focused on. And at the same time, I just feel it's important to recognize that there are deep divisions, that there are conflicts, and not everybody is respected at all times. This goes back and forth, Whether you're looking at the left or you're looking at the right, we see people dish it out, people take it, and then we see those people dish it out and return it to the other crowd. And may we eventually rise above that. That's what I'm hopeful for. But again, these things are what they are, and this is what happens, and this is even what I'm observing today in Denver.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And Barrett, your thoughts on, this big event, which is expected to take place tomorrow, nationwide, really, the Women's March. What are your own thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, so here in D.C., I've seen tons of people, fly in and travel in from across the country to participate in the march, and I think it's really, really good. I think one thing that we need to think about is that it's not just women. It's frankly men and children that are out in support of issues that are really important to the female community in the United States, and I've bumped into a lot of these people in the city, and you can just see how Trump's victory for so many of these women was just like, I don't know if a violation, but they feel that, how could they have someone who talks like this about women be the person that's representing their country? And then you see that their kids are here too. And like the other day I bumped into a 13-year-old girl, and this was the first presidential election that she was really kind of paying attention to as a child. And she just cannot, like her dad had to tell me how he had to explain to her all this stuff that, about when Trump said he wanted to grab, women by their private parts, or he felt he could do so, and what sexual assault is, and how this is just like impacting her perspective of the world, where she went from, Obama, who has kind of had like, a nuclear American family with, very just a respectful, polite individual, and going to Trump. It's been really, really jarring, and they need like a gathering, a catharsis to kind of say that we're in this together. And I think it's quite good, and I think how it extends beyond just women. It's people in support of women's issues, and I think it's quite good. I do, to go back to the previous point, in a democracy, there are people who are going to have that are supposed to have differing ideas and different perspectives, and the people that a perspective that clearly is not appreciated by the majority of the people organizing an event, they shouldn't expect to be automatically accepted into this group, knowing that their perspective is different, and then being surprised that something so obvious happened. You know, like right now, the amount of people that I know that get medical care from Planned Parenthood is like tons of guys I know go there to get STD exams and tests like that to just make sure their sexual health is good. You know, Planned Parenthood is a very important thing in the lives of many, many Americans beyond the issue of abortion. So for people that would do things to jeopardize this institution, to be surprised that they're not welcome with open arms to an event like this, I think it's, again, one of these things we shouldn't be surprised about. And then we have a conversation about how this thing happened and we didn't anticipate it. It's like, no, clearly you should anticipate that. Like, it's really, really predictable.
Oh, I think also, too, it's not necessarily justifiable. I mean, whenever we talk a good game about how we want to be very inclusive and we want to hear different people's voices, but we don't really mean it. When they disagree with us, we don't really mean it. And so I do think people were surprised because there has been this overarching view that this is about allowing women to come together for all sorts of reasons, regardless of their views. But when the proof has to be in the pudding's just not there sometimes. And I think we have to be realistic about
together
that.
For all sorts of reasons.
Also stop it. This whole tyranny of the majority view. I mean, there are significant reasons and really valuable reasons why people feel the way they do. And when you have an opportunity in the public square to bring people together, to help them find a common ground, that's the hope, that you reach for that higher ground and that you try to work with your differences. And so I think that the polarization that we see and that we've seen in Denver on this one issue it's unfortunate.
Okay, Barrett, what can you say about that?
Yeah, it's essentially when bringing people together, clearly for this right here, there's a specific purpose. It's not just women together just because we just happen to be women. Like, it's the day after the inauguration of Donald Trump. It's clearly women together for issues that run counter to Donald Trump. It is a peaceful protest gathering. So if there are people that support the views of Donald Trump, clearly it wouldn't fit in this structure. Like, there's a purpose for this gathering. It's really, really clear. It's beyond just the fact that someone is a woman. It's issues that this women that organize this feel are really, really important. So no, I don't think people should be surprised.
The marketing materials for the march in other cities.
Yes,
and then you would see how the march has been built.
Hold on a second.
That would be perhaps helpful to inform your perspective.
I totally get that you think the messaging is different than what I think the messaging is, and that's fine. Right. And that we can't. I don't know what the ads are in Denver. I'm in Washington D.C., where it's going to be where most of the ads are and everything. But I don't know what they say in Denver. But at the same time, this notion of the tyranny of the majority. We live in a democracy where the people, the voice that is the greater voice, is supposed to win elections. That's just the idea. And then we have a system of governance that makes it so that the majority and the minority get to communicate and find compromises if necessary, whatever. But that's
exactly what I want to say here.
Right. But that's not tyranny. Like right now, there is the group that's governing American society is the one that represents not the majority. Like, if we were going to start using the word tyranny in any capacity, it would be the one where, the president gets 3 million fewer votes, the Senate is not a proportional representation, and the House, there's the amount of, congressional districts that are under review for gerrymandering that make it so that the Republicans get a disproportionate representation in it, it's a lot. So, if we were going to use that word, it shouldn't be towards the voice that represents the majority of Americans. That's just kind of outrageous in a democracy.
Well, which is why I think, Samir, it would be really good if we could talk about the disproportionate megaphone. Maybe that's what we also need to talk about. I mean, again, I think that it's also, we really should, I would like to get into these issues of media because, of course, I find I find that there is there are differing views in part because there's also an overwhelming message. There are different views. There's different understanding on different political issues because of public education as well. And so that's, of course, where I think media play a role in all of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that there's a disproportionate power of media.
Yes. We will talk about that in a minute. I just want to say that I did hear both sides of the argument myself. I did hear people saying, about the march, just to close on the point of the march and move on to the media. People who are saying that, the Women's March is a protest march, and these are the voices of people who want to make sure their voices are heard, and that's why we're marching. And I heard the other, flip side of the coin, like, the people who represent a different view from these views should also be included, like those who are, quote-unquote, pro-life or, anti-abortion. We should include these as well. And I did hear both sides of the argument. And there's no easy yes, no, right or wrong answer here, but I think that the idea of people going out and expressing their views, as you both have been emphasizing, peacefully, and the right to have peaceful protest is very important in a democracy. And now on to the media, which is really your own area of expertise, both of you. I mean, what can we expect the Trump/media relationship to look like moving forward? I'll start with you, Barrett.
Yeah, I think thus far the relationship's been really confrontational and not healthy, and we can hope that it changes and gets for the better, but you can only make you should make projections based on what you're currently seeing. And Trump seems to be really prone to say that he wants to sue media entities. He called CNN fake news. He called BuzzFeed like a flaming pile of garbage. He doesn't give press briefings as frequently as other president-elects have. So it looks like it's going to be pretty tense, and that's just kind of what it looks like. It's going to be tense, and he's probably going to use Twitter, and who knows? He might try to incorporate Breitbart and conservative media entities to be a bigger part of his mouthpiece. He does have Steve Bannon on his White House team, so it might take a turn where he kind of tries to bypass established media and go directly via media entities that support him wholeheartedly and Twitter to talk to Americans, and that would be an interesting development. But with the mainstream media, like the major news networks, except for probably Fox News, it looks like it's going to be a pretty contentious relationship.
Let's get back to this point right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
معاكم الشيف أحمد إبراهيم من سوبر ماركت زمزم المطعم. عندنا أكلات كتير عراقية ومصرية ولبنانية زي جلابة وتشيكن طاووق وكباب ومسقعة، وأحيانا بنعمل الملوخية والكشري وفراخ مشوية، وكل اللي انتوا عايزينه موجود عندنا. اتفضلوا زورونا في محلات زمزم.
احييكم من اسواق زمزم، ويوجد عندنا تخفيضات كتيره على الاسواق وعلى الجروسري وعلى الخضار وعلى اللحوم. عندنا لحوم حلال، والمطعم كله لحوم حلال كمان. واتمنى لكم السلامه والدوام، وزورونا دايما، هتلاقوا تخفيضات كتيره وكبيره وتجدوا كل ما يسركم.
قشات ميديترينيان ماركت بإدارة سهر قشات وأولاده يرحبون بالجالية العربية والكلدانية. جميع أنواع المواد الغذائية، ألبان طازجة، الكرزات والبهارات الطازجة. داخل الأسواق مطعم ميديترينيان شيش كباب يقدم يوميا جميع أنواع الكباب، المقبلات العربية العراقية وصواني الكامبو المميزة. تفتح الأسواق من 8 إلى 9 مساء من الاثنين وحتى السبت، ومن 8 صباحا إلى 9 مساء يوم الأحد. تقع الأسواق على 32839 نورث ويسترن هايواي في مدينة فارمينغتون هيلز. لحوم حلال للجالية الإسلامية. لطلباتكم من المطعم كول 248-538-7855. That is 248-538-7855. قشة ميديترينيان ماركت، خدمة متميزة ومعاملة راقية.
استوديو زرياب بإدارة حسن حامد في ستوري هايتس يحييكم ويقدم لكم خدماته بالصوت والصورة، تسجيل، تصوير، مونتاج، فيديو كليب، إعلانات، كوميرشالز، دوكيومنتري، أفلام وثائقية للترويج لبضائعكم ومحلاتكم وشركاتكم، برامج تلفزيونية وإذاعية. استوديو زرياب وبتقنية عالية بإدارة حسن حامد 313-945-8860 313-945-8860 أو 248-761-5787. استوديو زرياب، الصوت والصورة اختصاصنا.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNZK 690 AM and wdmv 700 AM.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. We're talking today about this historical moment, the Trump's new era, and its political and communication changes and challenges. And with me this morning discussing this important topic are two media experts, Mr. Barrett Pitner and Ms. Tatum. Kristen, before going to the break, immediately we're talking about what could be the expected Trump/media relationship. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think that this is a two-way street, and it's interesting in the run-up to the election. A lot of what Donald Trump has said to me is indefensible. It's a lot of what he said is rude. It's just ridiculous on a lot of different levels. It's goading, all of these things that I just cringe whenever I see him. I think what he's going to have to do is learn how to keep his emotions in check and stick to the facts as best he can in dealing with reporters. On the flip side, let me tell you, for months and months and months during his campaign, this is not news coverage that isn't worthy of condemnation on some level. If you track individual reporters' Twitter feeds alone, you will find a lot of what I consider very inappropriate comments to come from these people that have only undermined the integrity of their reporting. And the public isn't stupid. The public is following these specific people, and I get that people have opinions and they want to express their views. But I think what's happened is that their views have tripped into their dislike, which has tripped into their loathing, and it's all very, very apparent. And so I think that there needs to almost be a reset, if we can refer to reset. We need to try to work for a reset of some sort, because I agree, moving forward, this is not going to go well if both camps of people, if Donald Trump and a lot of his advisors continue in the veins that they have, and if an unfortunate number of reporters continue to behave as they have, this is going to just be a very tense and ridiculous and awful situation for everyone. And unfortunately, I think it's going to only tarnish, diminish, really undermine and weaken the institution of American journalism, because it takes only a few bad actors, and I don't care what we're talking about, it takes only a few bad apples, a few bad actors to begin to reflect on everyone. And that's very, very unfortunate dynamic, but that's also just reality.
Right. I mean, in the first press conference, we saw how he reacted towards the CNN, correspondent, and, I was like, holding my breath, how is this going to, play out? And obviously people were not comfortable about this kind of, attitude, whether, in the way Donald Trump addressed the CNN reporter, calling him rude and, calling CNN fake news. And it made us wonder what the relationship really is going to look like. And a lot of people expect, as you said, both of you, some tensions and some hardships moving forward. But Kristen, you also mentioned this is a two-way street, meaning he has a responsibility to control his emotions in the way he deals with the media. And obviously you're saying that some media persons and outlets should also look at how they are reacting or behaving. I mean, Barrett, what's your take on the media responsibility? What would the media responsibility be in a Trump administration? What would media people be expected to to do or to say or to act or to behave as professional media journalists and media people.
Yeah, Trump and the people who are Trump supporters thus far have shown a large inclination to criticize any sort of media coverage that they find to be unfavorable. The CNN one's the best example. Like, that was a story that all the other publications had. It was not. They were just relaying information. You felt like you could attack them and try to denigrate the entire institution that is CNN, as is CNN, which prides itself on having, Corey Lewandowski, who used to work for him, worked at CNN, and he is very, very prone to demonizing any sort of media entity that has negative news coverage. I think one of the fascinating things that, from what we were just talking about, is that when we talk about the media, people have a greater emphasis on Twitter now than they have ever had before. Like, Twitter used to be the place where journalists could chat, and like the people that follow them and read their stories, and like there would be a difference between like the story that someone writes and just chatting on Twitter, because the amount of people that are in their 20s that use Twitter almost as if it's like instant messenger and they're chatting with friends is really, really large. So like there was an understanding of the amount of leeway between like an edited, thoroughly researched piece to someone just chatting with supporters or whatever, or cracking a joke on Twitter. But now we have the president who only seems capable of communicating via Twitter, and so now we're viewing Twitter as if it's the most serious thing in the world, and like the main way to communicate in the news industry, apart from like reporting and articles and all the other process that we used to rely on the most. Like, I think we're seeing a clear downgrade on what people think are real, what they value, how they want to get their news, and it all stems from one source. Like, we're giving examples of how one bad apple could ruin the whole thing. Like, the president of the United States he was a candidate for president that from the very get-go, everyone was like, this guy, why is he here? He's not qualified. The things he says are outrageous. There's no way he's going to last. And now, he was the bad apple that has now controlled and risen all the way to the top and distorted how we perceive what fake news is. Is a tweet as important as a whole story? Like, it's really absurd. So the conversation and the challenges that journalism industry is going to face are really severe, because Trump has shown a great inclination to criticize just legitimate news establishments for reported objective reports. At the same time, people are now going to pick through Twitter feeds and try to find any kind of false tweet or tweet they could criticize as something to invalidate it, like someone's entire article or whatever there is. So
I think it's pretty ridiculous, though, to overlook that Twitter always has been a very, very, very public forum. And I think that journalists have always known this, and we can talk about how they go back and forth and they chitter-chat, but at the same time, they've got to start cleaning up their acts. This should also, the blowback that they're getting should come as absolutely no surprise to them. And when I started to track individual reporters' banter, I mean, even which I've been around many, many blocks, even I was surprised, and I've known that some of these things would have hauled me into the editor's offices, senior editor's offices at very large news organizations, because they wouldn't have tolerated this kind of interaction on such a public forum. And so, because again, it really does compromise the representation of the news organization's coverage. And we can debate all day about whether people are fair. We can debate all day. Objectivity, that's a noble myth. That's an aspirational goal. That's what you should be learning on the first day of journalism. It's not really there. You just reach for it, right? But what we really can't debate so much is accuracy. And it is amazing to me how inaccurate. And inaccuracy is also created as much by the information that we put into news coverage as the information we leave out of it. And inaccuracy isn't as much up for debate. And it is amazing to me the mountain of inaccurate news coverage that has consistently come out, not just about Donald Trump, also about Hillary Clinton. And people just want to pass, or they want to laugh about it on Twitter, or think that it's no big deal. And then we do get to